Hey, Seahawks fans! It is the night before. It is I don't even know the September 8th. The Seahawks play the Broncos like a few hours from now. Not a full 24. We're already under 24. It's a 1:25 p.m. kick tomorrow. And honestly, who can like sit here and sit on a couch today watching TV or a show instead of be talking about the Seahawks? I couldn't. I knew I was going to be on here, and so could some of our guests. We've got Evan Hill and Evan. I know that you are struggling to keep things together ahead of this game. How are you doing, man?
I'm a little jittery. It's in like the last 2 to 3 hours. I don't know why it's starting to feel real. It's like I don't know about you guys. Okay, this is a tangent. We're gonna start off right off the bat with a tangent. I don't know if you guys like the night before on Saturday nights before Sundays. I cannot sleep. I sleep like maybe 4 hours every Saturday night. So I'm starting to get a little jittery. I'm starting to get a little excited, and by tomorrow morning, I'm gonna be uncontrollable, basically.
Well, let's hope you're relatively uncontrollable in the next hour. That should be fun. And then Will, we do not get you to join as often. For folks that don't know Will, he has made the Rain City series, done some great stuff, and also helps cut up the pod, which for those of you who've been listening lately, it's really nice now. He's got it into having different different segments. So if you don't want to listen to the whole thing, you want to just cut my part out and listen to some crazy food take from Evan. So Will, it's great to have you aboard.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. It's been some time, so I'm happy to join you guys and actually have a conversation with you guys instead of just hearing. So happy to be on.
Yeah, dude, I'm really excited about this game tomorrow. I feel like we all have realistic expectations. Tough to win in Denver. High altitude, all that stuff. 17-1 in the first 2 weeks of the last, whatever, how many years. And they got Von Miller, and they've got a lot of stuff going on. And I don't know. I feel like everybody's sleeping on the Seahawks. Like Russell Wilson's nothing. Like Chris Carson is not going to stomp on people. Or Deion Jordan, they're counting on him not being in the game. He's going to be there. They weren't counting on Earl Thomas. Earl Thomas is going to be there. Like, I feel like people are sleeping on the Seahawks, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how they come out tomorrow. What's going on in your mind, Will, when you're thinking about this game? Like, what are you really hoping to see?
I'm really hoping to see a good run game. I'm really interested to see what Chris Carson looks like for the whole year. So that's kind of my my first look at. But also I want to see good play on the offensive line. All signs kind of look to be pointing up. I saw your grades that you posted. I think that was about 2 weeks ago, and pretty stark improvement there across the board. So I'm hoping to see that kind of play out when it matters. I agree. I think we're kind of being slept on, and I think if we can get a run game going, because you kind of have to remember, there was virtually no run game last year. And they still, all things considered, did pretty well. So I think if Russell Wilson can stay healthy this year, and you get a good, you get a running back that can get up into the 1,000 yards range on the year, I think we're looking pretty good. I don't think we're getting enough credit as we should be.
So, Will, you've always struck me as a super chill guy, and you're super chill right there. But I mean, what would it take? What would it take during the game for you to get out of your, get off your chair, maybe even let out a little scream, maybe punch someone next to you? What would it take? What kind of play? What would you want to see that would cause you to get really excited?
A quick start for change. Yeah. I've grown so accustomed to, I think we all have in recent years, just the slow starts. Defenses are fresh, but especially as Seahawks fans, like all the ugly week 1 games that we've seen, maybe outside of 1 or 2. But I just want to see a quick start. I want to see you can kind of, get the ball rolling right away, score for a touchdown on the first possession. That'd be nice.
And Evan, I mean, captain of optimism and, the Care Bear of Seahawks Twitter. Like, what is when you look at, when you point your Care Bear stare at this game, like what are you What are you really hoping to see? What is the thing that's gonna make you even peak excitement?
How do I even start this? This is a new team. This is a new squad. For the first time in years, and I was talking about this on Twitter, for the first time in years, there's unknown players. There's unknown outcomes in terms of how these schemes are going to change defensively and offensively, especially on the offensive line. There's unpredictability on this roster, and I could not be more excited about it. I've kind of discussed this with Will off the air before, but in previous years, especially like with the Legion of Boom's like main prominence, it's hard to describe, but for me as a fan, it felt like there was this mounting pressure before all these stars hit 30 that they had to win another Super Bowl. They had to redeem themselves from Super Bowl 49. They had to redeem the interception. It could not end like this. And the reality is that era ended kind of poorly. But the fact of the matter is that it ended. It's done. It's gone. This is a new squad, a new team. You have new players. You don't have the same old veteran voices. You have new coaches. I think people are, and let me stop on this point real quick. I think people are really underselling how much the different offensive coaches are going to play in terms of like a difference. I seriously think like if I could hinge this season on one person, player or coach or front office person, I would say it's Mike Solari. And I'm not kidding when I say his name. And his name is a little weird to pull out of the hat. But I have a real hard time seeing Schottenheimer, our whole offense, fail if our offensive line is competent or better. What we saw in the preseason was super encouraging. Do you guys remember the first drive of the Vikings game? That's the shit we want to see. And that was incredible. We saw a fundamental shift. We had Jake Heaps on the podcast last week and how he talked about how the offensive line is going to change schematically. I could not be more excited about what this offense is going to look like. If this offense is dangerous and not something to be messed with, watch out, man. Watch out. This team could be real scary.
Will, Evan's already in tears. I mean, this is the level of passion you've got from your buddy over there. I'm really interested. Like, set aside, suspend disbelief for a second. All right, suspend, disbelief entirely. If there is one thing or two things that come to mind that if they happened in this game, it would be the indicator. It would be a key indicator that the Seahawks are going to be better than what we thought. What would be like the most encouraging thing that you could see happen?
Again, I'm gonna tie it to that offensive line. Considering they've got, I know Chubb hasn't had the preseason that people thought he was going to have, but you still got Von Miller over there. I think if you can kind of diminish his play through this game, I'm going to feel really good going forward, especially knowing that we've got a stud running back there as well. So.
You know what? I'm going to pause you for a sec, Will. Can we go one by one by the offensive line? I'm going to interject here. So obviously we know Dwayne Brown is a stud. Re-sign him this offseason. I have complete faith that he's probably going to be a stud for maybe another 2-3 years, maybe 4 years if you're lucky. I'm not worried about him this year at all. I'm really excited about Pochik bulking up. He was somebody who last year looked like he really needed another 20, 30 pounds. There were a few bull rushes where he just got, completely thrown to the side and he didn't have the foundation, really didn't have like the sturdiness to him. And I think everybody agreed that he needed a little bit more bulk. And, you saw him put on like, I think it was 25 pounds this offseason. So there's been several breakdowns on him in the preseason about how much that added weight could assist him. If Pochik becomes solid, you're suddenly looking at a really solid left side of the offensive line. You're looking at Dwayne Brown, Ethan Pochik, and Justin Britt. I mean, that's solid. That's the best Russell Wilson has had left side his entire career in the NFL. And then you have DJ Fluker, who is a phenomenal run blocker, struggles in pass pro, but if he can be coached up to be decent in pass protection, I'm feeling better about him. Even I don't know if you guys saw the breakdowns from Samuel Gold from The Athletic this past offseason with Sweezy's play in Tampa. I know he was injured for a significant portion of his time there, but he looked like a completely different pass protector post Cable in Tampa. And, we know he's a phenomenal run blocker, but he's getting the start this weekend, I believe, with DJ Fluker out. So it'll be really interesting to see what he does. And then obviously you have Jermaine Ifedi at right tackle, who's a problem. But I'm going to put a little caveat here. Will Dissly, Brian Nemhauser, your favorite rookie, Will Dissly. Actually, I don't know if he's your favorite rookie.
He's fine.
He's fine.
He's fine.
He's fine.
I love a Will Dissly style tight end. Like,
he's the best tight end we've had in the past 5 years.
I'm here for the Ryan Hannums, which is before your time. The even the Mike Tice's, like, yeah. I'm all for that. And Zach Miller was the prototypical Seahawks tight end for the Seahawks for this offense. As you're saying, we haven't had that for a number of years. So I'm a Dissly fan, but man, he's not Michael Dixon. He's not.
He's not an All-Pro yet.
Rasheem Green, there's some others, but yeah, continue. Just
to wrap up my little tangent is, with the blocking we saw from Dissly this preseason, if you park him next to Ifedi, it's just off what you said. Like, he complements what our offensive goal and what our offensive identity is so much better than what, like, Jimmy Graham was. Luke Wilson was a pretty good blocker, but Dissly is somebody that, man, he could play a really underrated role in terms of this offensive production this year. I'm really excited about him.
Let me tell you guys, I've got a list of things that if these things happen in this game, I'm going to be psyched, even if one of them happens in this game. Okay. And I would start with if Ifedi himself can actually hold up his own against Von Miller. Nobody is expecting that. If you told me out of this game that if we have like tape of Ifedi like stonewalling Von Miller more often than not, that would be a crazy outcome of this game. Also related to that, if Ifedi was so crappy that they pulled him in the first few series and George Fant came in, and he looked great, that would also be a great indicator that the Seahawks could be better than people think. Beyond that, if Brandon Marshall, if he catches passes and he looks like a guy that is hard to cover, it's going to be huge. It's going to be huge. If Tyler Lockett tomorrow looks like the playmaker he was as a rookie, he plays down the field and he's making plays across the field, that's a huge sign. A lot of people are still doubters. If Doug Baldwin looks like Doug Baldwin at 80, 85%, whatever he is physically, if he looks like Doug Baldwin, that's huge. Like, one of the best receivers in the game. If Rasheem Green gets pass pressure consistently, or we see that Deion Jordan is really legit, like, these are huge changes in what the potential is for this team, right? So, like, God, if Shaquem Griffin actually looks like a guy that is not going to be taken advantage of at the will position, that would be huge. No one's expecting that. And then let's talk about this for a second, because there's some questions coming in about this as well. Whoever the hell is going to play cornerback opposite Shaquille Griffin. Found out today Dante Johnson was put on IR after Byron Maxwell was put on IR after they cut Richard Sherman, who's going to play in the first week. So assume it's going to be Trey Flowers or Nico Thorpe or someone like that is going to play. If one of those guys actually looks competent, I guess I wouldn't really believe it from Thorpe. If Trey Flowers, if he plays and he looks competent, holy crap, that's a huge, huge unknown. That would be a big deal. So with that, some questions. Joey, who's one of our patrons, he has a question about if there's any updates out there on Deshaun Shedd's injury status and, whether the Seahawks would be interested. So Evan, do you have any information on his status? And two, how would you feel if you see the name Deshaun Shedd added back to the Seahawks roster?
Well, my first thought is that he's a 30-year-old quarterback. Corners notoriously drop off at 30. Detroit fans were not super happy with his release, which was interesting to me. To me, this is a classic example of Pete wanting to go with younger, youthful talent. He hasn't been in the system for a little bit. This is one of those situations where I would just prefer to go with who you currently have. I know you put Dante Johnson on IR and you just reached an injury settlement with Byron Maxwell, but I mean, let's revisit this question in like a week. If Trey Flowers absolutely bombs and Nico Thorpe is absolutely god awful, but like I think we should see what we have in Trey Flowers. Like there's a lot of worried, kind of pessimistic negativity about him starting tomorrow. You know what? People probably weren't too excited about Richard Sherman starting his first game as a rookie.
Come on, don't do that to the kid.
I'm not saying he's going to be
nowhere close.
No, I'm not saying he's going to be Richard Sherman. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying he has a great opportunity here. He looked fairly good in preseason. His technique's okay.
I think that's a very positive Evan Care Bear perspective. He did not look that good preseason.
He looked okay. He's a gamer. He doesn't care about practice.
He only got like 6 flags and, had trouble covering people going across the field.
Oh,
but
tight in coverage. He just had to pull back his arm.
He's learning his hands.
This would be a good test for them also because Denver's receiving core is not too shabby. And so we're going to find out pretty quick if they can.
And the interesting thing there is everybody knows Demaryius Thomas and everyone knows Emmanuel Sanders, but the guy that Denver fans are talking about the most is Cortland Sutton.
He looks pretty good.
Leaper, made some of those plays, made a nice play against Josh Norman in the preseason. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, they got 3 legit receivers that are going to challenge. And yeah, point taken. Like, it would be great if Trey Flowers panned out. I'm with you, Evan, on Deshaun Shedd. Will, I don't know. Interestingly, I tweeted out today, once we found out that Dante Johnson was going on IR, I was like, don't sleep on DeAndre Elliott. Seattle cut him early in camp because he was injured, didn't make it back. But if it's been a few months now, if he's gotten back into shape, that's a guy that can play outside or inside. He's young, has upside. Well, in the middle of the show, he retweeted my tweet and responded, says, "You just don't know." And he's laughed about it. So how would you feel like Deshaun Shedd, DeAndre Elliott, Bashawn Breeland is out there? Like, what would your take be if one of those names, who would you want to hear called as a guy they add to the roster?
I see Deshaun Shedd as more of a stopgap situation. I'm kind of with Evan. I kind of like the trial by fire approach. Put them out there, see what they can do. It'll be, again, we said it'll be a true test in Denver on the road. I say put them out there and see what you've got. And if it's just an absolute, garbage fire, maybe thinking about bringing a guy like Deshaun Shedd in,
All right, let's see what other questions we got here, folks that are joining. Feel free to add more in. So what individual matchup, we'll go with you, Will. What individual matchup do you guys see as the most important tomorrow? And this is from Silk Monkey. Hello, Silk Monkey. And he says Von Miller versus the whatever right tackle. But what's your individual matchup that you're most
I was gonna go with that also. But now if that's been taken. Gosh, I'm really excited to watch Shaquem Griffin tomorrow. That's the player on defense for sure that I'll be looking at the most.
Nice. And Evan, is there an individual matchup? It's all right to use the same one if that's the one that you think is going to most determine the outcome tomorrow.
It's Doug Baldwin versus Chris Harris, and I'll tell you why. Because we got to know how healthy Doug Baldwin is. We had that weird freaking quote a couple weeks ago where he was like, I'm going to be 80% all season or whatever. And then he followed it up with like, I've never felt 100% healthy since birth or something. So Doug Baldwin is clearly trolling us right now. But on a serious note, we need to know how healthy he is and what that looks like and what that translates to in terms of production on the field. Because if we're dealing with an not very good Doug Baldwin the entire season, that suddenly becomes a really big issue for this offense. So Chris Harris is no joke.
That is way too, you're being a downer, Evan. I can't handle that.
I know. I'm just pessimistic all the time.
You finally found your true self. So, look, I'm gonna maybe cheat a little bit. Like the individual matchup that I really believe is most important tomorrow is Brian Schottenheimer versus Joe Wood and the Denver defensive coordinator. Like, there is a huge advantage you have when no one has seen your offense. Like, there's no tape for them to look at and see how. Sure, they can see what Schottenheimer's done in the past. Have they seen what he's done with this group? And we heard from Brandon Marshall on Thursday. I don't know if you got this, guys, but he's talking about, it's been great to play with number 3, but the guy that's really like blown me away is Brian Schottenheimer. He spent time talking about it. He's one of the smartest guys I've worked with. He listens to his players. They go back and forth about what's working and what's not. He goes in this game. He has a chance to scheme a victory for the Seahawks. Like, I don't know. So I'm really interested to see how that plays out. And gosh, if they can get a running game going, it sure would be nice. First time in years that one person is doing the offensive game plan. It's coming from the same brain as opposed to Tom Cable doing the run game plan and then 3 or 4 days into the week handing it over to Darrell Bevell. This is really how it happened. And Darrell Bevell had no idea what was going to be happening with the run game. And then he had to build out the pass part and bring it together and then that was a mess, right? Like, that is not the way any other NFL team works. So Schottenheimer is going to be able to actually go through and build that game plan. I think that's going to be a really interesting thing to watch. So, all right. Let's see. American Sniper wants to know what jersey should I what jersey should I get? Kind of tossed up between Ford, Puna, I don't even know if there is a Puna, Rasheem Green, Chris Carson, or one of the Shaqs. You guys have any opinions on that?
Yeah, I'll answer this one first. All those answers are wrong. It should be Michael Dixon, number 1. Number 2, if you go with Puna Ford, you're going to have to customize the jersey. American Sniper, listen to my words very carefully here. And you're going to have to customize the back, and it's going to have to be a P, and then like 8 as many characters as they allow O's, and then NA. So it has to be a super long Puna. So you following that, American Sniper? Max out the character limit. This is very key.
All right. Will, you need to repeat some of his choices?
No, I'm going with Chris Carson.
Yeah, why?
Because you've got to be – I've learned the hard way so many times buying jerseys. I've had the Jay Hackett jersey, for example, who I loved back in the day. But you've got to be – there's a balance to jersey buying. You've got to have someone that you think is going to be around long enough for the jersey to be worth it. I know there's a lot of people out there that made the mistake of buying the Matt Flynn jerseys, even the Percy Harvin jerseys. So you kind of got to be ahead of the curve a little bit. It's I would go with Carson. I don't see a lot of Carson jerseys at those games yet.
Why would you suggest a person to buy our backup running back's jersey?
Well, that's a different conversation, isn't it?
Oh yeah, Evan's feeling the feels. Look, Rashad Penny, like, he could have a game tomorrow. Like, he might be the guy that's returning kicks, and maybe even in the mile high air, maybe he'll get a chance and he'll take one to the house. Maybe he'll, make Von Miller look really foolish, and everyone will be talking about it. That's a possibility, Evan. You can feel really good about your jersey pretty soon.
On a side note on that, I would really prefer Tyler Lockett to stop returning kicks. I want him exclusively.
Kicks or punts. Like, I'm good with punts, but I'd like someone else doing kicks. What's your take?
I just want him exclusively as a receiver. I just think he has kind of a rocky injury history, and I want to protect my baby. I'm just worried about him getting hurt. Those plays are obviously so dangerous. And wasn't Rashad Penny known for being like a really dynamic, like?
He was. He absolutely was. So I'm with you on the kicks. I'd rather see him do punts. I don't think they have anyone else. Like David Moore, maybe, but I'm interested. We'll talk about that maybe a little bit later. Who we think is going to be inactive, or who's I That's kind of boring, but I am kind of curious if Mike Davis or, is it going to be Mike Davis or CJ Procise? Anyway. Will. Oh, wait, I didn't answer this, but it's okay. I would actually go with Chris Carson as well. So I was going to ask you, so Joey forgets a lot. It's one of our Hawkblogger patrons. People that aren't patrons should absolutely join Patreon, patreon.com/Hawkblogger. And you join and you can get on the show directly and we'll answer your questions and a bunch of other fun stuff. So Joey asks, none of the Hawkblogger crew has had a lot of positive things to say about Penny, even the guy that owns his jersey. Regardless of how you feel about it being a wasted first-round pick, which you may or may not feel that way, what do you see as the floor ceiling for this game and the season for Rashad Penny? Evan, I got to go to you first. You got his jersey. What's the floor and ceiling for this game for him and over the season?
Oh, God.
Tough question.
It's so hard to answer the floor and the ceiling question because I truly have no idea how many snaps he's going to get. It's so difficult because we only saw Penny in one preseason game. And if we had seen him through like 3 full preseason games, I'd feel a lot more confident answering this question. But I mean, it could be anywhere from 0 yardage, I know, quality analysis, to like 75 yards, maybe a touchdown. I'm not sure. It depends on if they use him around the goal line or not. But I'm done with the Penny pessimism. Come on. The dude showed up in one preseason game, had a freak injury in practice, with a pass protection drill. Let's give him a shot before we start saying wasted first-round pick, draft capital. Yeah. Before we start talking all that crap, let's at least give him like a shot. And, if he ends up being a generational talent and he's a Sean Alexander type who only balls out in games, as has been said by many commentators, great news. So we'll find out really soon.
It's a wasted first-round pick. That's okay. But it doesn't mean he's bad, but he's running back. Will, what's the floor ceiling for Rashad Penny in this game and for the season?
It is really tough because, especially when you do floor ceiling for a first game, because we don't really know how things are going to play out yet. I mean, obviously the floor could be like 2 fumbles and like, -5 yards. It could be even worse than that. Who knows? But I saw Joey's question a little bit earlier, and I was thinking how cool it would be. I was kind of just, envisioning in my head imagine how cool it would be if Carson and Penny both turn out to be really good backs, and I know they're different runners, but imagine like a Tevin Coleman, Devontae Freeman situation in Seattle, like how awesome that would be, and how many people would be forgetting, saying the wasted first round pick, all these things. If we have like a really good, kind of like dual back system that they use in Atlanta, that would be super dynamic for the offense, and I would be all for it. I think that's kind of from a season standpoint, I think that might be the ceiling when it comes to those 2 backs.
Yeah, I guess as someone who's been unimpressed so far with Rashad Penny, hopeful, obviously want to see something great, but not that impressed so far. I would say for the first game, I'm assuming they're going to give him at least a series, and if he ends up with, I think the floor is it could be like negative yards or 0 yards or something like that. Denver was the #1 run defense in the NFL last year. They had other problems, but they were good there, and they should be good again. But ceiling for this game, I don't know, like 25 yards, maybe a touchdown, but unlikely. I don't think they'd put him in there down near the red zone. So, I don't expect much in the first game. For the season, I think could be anywhere from 100 yards to 5 at most, I think, probably, unless there's some kind of injury, which, knock on wood, won't happen with Chris Carson. I think they're going to have a hard time taking Chris Carson off the field. That's what I think is going to happen. I think Chris Carson's ceiling for this season is like 1,500 yards, rushing, and actually, let me take that back. I think his ceiling for rushing is probably closer to 1,300 yards. His ceiling for touchdowns, I think, is like 12, 14, like receiving and rushing. So I think he could be a massive difference maker for this team. So
not to go off track.
Yeah.
To what you were saying. Let's say just for now, in a perfect world, that Carson does get 1,300 yards, 1,500 yards, some in that range, 12 touchdowns ish. Russell Wilson's healthy the whole year. You got to think that Seahawks are a playoff team at that point. If you were to tell me right now that Russell Wilson has been healthy all year, and you've got a back, let's say that Rashad Penny gets 500 yards and Carson gets 1,200. You got to assume that that's a playoff team.
I mean, that's a deep playoff team.
Right. You'd have to assume, right?
And this is why I'm here to tell you the Seahawks are going to the damn playoffs.
You proved it because of so you're basically your prediction is based on the fact that you believe Chris Carson is going to rush for 1,300 yards and have 12 touchdowns or something like that. You believe Russell Wilson will be healthy. So is that kind of what you're envisioning, Evan? This coming together?
Okay. As much as I love Penny and got his jersey and have great hopes for him, Carson is a stud. I'm telling you that right now. Carson is a stud. I not that this matters at all, but I reached crazy hard for him in my fantasy football draft. I know what is coming. I know what is coming. This is a vastly improved run blocking team. You added a tight end who's an absolute stud run blocker. They're gonna run the ball. It's gonna happen. Chris Carson is good. This is the year of Chris Carson.
Yeah, I just think if you're told right now by some sort of genie in a bottle, it's like Chris Carson's gonna have 1,350 yards this year, 12 touchdowns. Russell Wilson will be healthy, and we'll have a Russell Wilson year. You would have to think that equates to a playoff run, and if not,
how many wins is that? Right. What are we talking? Is that 12 wins?
No.
Or some really brutal, horrible shootout losses, if not.
I have a really hard time seeing the Seahawks ceiling being more than 10 wins. I think that's really tough. I think 11 is as high as I could possibly go, but floor to ceiling for the season, I think the floor, let's take injuries out of it. Let's assume that everyone's healthy, which is not going to be the case. But floor for the Seahawks, if they're all healthy, to me is 6 wins. But ceiling is only 11. So I don't know. Evan, I think your ceiling clearly is 12 or maybe more because
not more than 12. But I truly like I said, I keep going back to the offense. We've made such vast improvements in the offense. People will point to P. Rich being gone. People will point to Jimmy Graham being gone. Bullcrap. They don't matter. The offensive line matters. That's who matters. Give Russell time. I do not give a single flying crap about who the receivers are. Russell will make them great.
Preach. Yes. Yeah.
I liked your guys' conversation last week about season predictions. I wish I could have joined in on that one because I was just I got to share my opinion on this. I was with Brian. I'm at about 9 or 10 wins. I think the ceiling's about 11. 12 seems unreasonable. And I don't think that for the floor, might have to go 6 also. I mean, I think a bad season this year is going to be 7 and 9. And I think that 7 and 9 is a reasonable floor because you have an elite quarterback and you take a look at New Orleans the last couple of years. Those were some of the worst defenses we've seen in years. And they still managed to go 7 and 9 in a pretty tough division also with the Panthers and Falcons. So, I mean, anything under 7 and 9, I think would be a disaster. I don't think they'll go over 11. So it's kind of in that range for me.
Yeah. All right. So Evan, on this is from Scott Hyleton. He says on a 1 to 10 scale, what do you think the defense was before Earl reported, and how do you think it will be with him?
10 being amazing, I'm assuming.
Yeah, 10 being great.
Before Earl reported, I'm gonna say a 4. And after Earl reported, I'm gonna say a 6 or a 7. I have not been an optimistic preacher about the Seahawks defense this year. I am telling you right now, they are going to be inconsistent, and they will make some plays, and they're going to lose you some games. I truly believe this is the year of offensive shootouts and offense carrying this team. I think they well, maybe not obviously, but I think they have some young defensive talent that is exciting, but I don't think they're going to be consistent this year.
So, Will, where are you? Before Earl Thomas, 1 to 10, where is the defense, and after Earl Thomas?
I'm with Evan on this one. I think they were a below average defense. And I think that the addition of Earl Thomas, it just alleviates so much pressure, especially we talked about the cornerback position. It alleviates so much pressure on these young corners that add Earl Thomas. And I think that boosts them up to maybe an average, just a little bit above average defense. 5.5, if that counts. 6.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're all pretty similar. I would probably put the Seahawks around 3 without him, and I mean, a lot of that is to do with, I think the Seahawks without him had maybe the worst safety crew in the NFL. They're definitely in the bottom 5. Let's just say that safely. And with him, I think they're at least 5. From 3 to a 5. I think that could be as high as a 6 if some of the other guys kind of work out and play well with him. So that's a great question and it's really interesting. It's gonna be really interesting to see. I think we're all expecting Earl to be Earl, and that's a matter of like how can he help make can he make Trey Flowers look better than he looked? Like he didn't play with Trey Flowers, so maybe that's part of what's keeping him from being great. All right, so let's keep going. Look at some more questions here. How short, and this is for you, Will, how short is Ifedi's rope? This is from Seattle Sports. How short is Ifedi's rope before he gets pulled for someone else?
Gosh, I'd have to say it's pretty short. That's just maybe I speak for myself, but I'm so done seeing Russell run from his life on that side. But I don't know. Again, we'll have to see what happens. And that, again, going back to matchups this week, it's going to be a big test for him this week. So we're going to kind of find out pretty quickly where he's at, won't we?
Yeah. How about you, Evan? What's it going to take to pull Ifedi? How short is the rope?
Well, we know Pete gets absolutely pissed with those false start penalties. So
that's the right answer.
I'm telling you, if there's a penalty, I want to say 1 penalty and he's out for the series minimum. I mean, I can't say it. It's 1 false start penalty, and I think he's out for the series. We saw it in the mock scrimmage in preseason at the practice we went to. Brian, remember when the whole group groaned, the offense like audibly gasped in pain. That's what's gonna. I'm not saying that's what's gonna happen, but if that happens, I think he's out for a series minimum.
I agree. I think the penalties are going to be a bigger deal than if he's getting beat. I think he could get beat by Von Miller a couple of times and maybe still stay in the game. But if he gets a couple of false start penalties,
you know what?
Not come back in.
You know what? We may not be appreciating Jermaine Ifedi enough. I'm telling. I have a reason why. Let me tell you why. I think Jermaine Ifedi maybe played a huge role in Tom Cable getting fired. Because last season, Pete was absolutely pissed with the what felt like 47 false start penalties across the entire season from Jermaine Ifedi. And I don't know if you guys remember the press conferences, but like week after week, Pete was like, we cannot get these penalties cleaned up. What's it gonna take? And Tom, Ifedi was Tom Cable's guy. He did the whole like leaning bullshit on him where he's like, oh, he has a really sturdy base when I push on him. I mean, come on. This brings me pain, actually, just talking about this. It's like therapeutic, but yeah, that's my long answer. I'm done.
Yeah, it's and I think most of us feel like if Ifedi gets pulled, he may not come back. Like Jordan could totally, lock down that spot if they give him a chance. So
I have an even bolder take. if Jermaine Ifedi has just an absolute disastrous, I'm talking absolute disastrous first half of the season, I could see him being cut. And I'm not kidding.
No, Evan,
No, I could.
He's not getting cut.
I could. Pete hates penalties. Hates them. Hates them.
Hates them so much that he leads the league in penalties like every season. That's how much he hates them. I mean, come on. That's like saying he hates challenges.
I mean, you're not
accurately hates losing challenges.
I mean, you're not wrong, but he hates penalties from Jermaine Ifedi.
He says he does. All right, so let's get back to we got another question from our patron here, Joey. All right, Seattle had 14 interceptions last year, with Earl having 2, Sherm having 2, Coleman having 2, Griffin and others with 1. What do you think we can expect for interceptions or even turnovers this year? FYI, only defensive players with TDs last year were Earl with 1 and Justin Coleman with 2. Yeah, so what do you think we can expect for interceptions or even just turnovers?
I'm going to be a little optimistic about this. I know the defense, I said the defense is going to be inconsistent, and I do believe that. But I think with Sherman not playing like a lockdown side and, opposing offenses like really fearing him so much so that they won't even throw the ball his direction, I think they're going to take more risks with this secondary. And one big potential difference here is if Shaq Griffin can learn to turn his hips, then we may see a few picks out of him. So I think opposing offenses are going to be a little riskier, and I'm not saying the defense is going to be good, but they will probably get more picks than last year.
Yeah, you kind of have to wonder where you're going to get those turnovers from. I mean, like who's going to step up this year and become playmakers on that defense? You know that Bobby Wagner obviously can do it. I think Shaquem Griffin can be a guy like that. But man, other than Earl Thomas, I don't know. I don't see a lot of defensive playmakers. You know what I mean? Like turnover, like ball hawks, like we're so used to seeing here in Seattle. I almost have to think that I think the majority of our turnovers will come by way of fumble this year, more so than interceptions.
Yeah, that's a good take.
Well, the Seahawks have not generally had good luck with fumble turnovers for whatever reason. I feel like even in the preseason this year, they had one game where there was like 4 or 6 balls that hit the ground, and Seahawks managed to get like none of them. I don't know. It's by statistics, it's supposed to be almost 50-50 if you get fumble recoveries. It does not feel like this. We're due to a regress to the mean, maybe. So maybe we'll end up being correct there. So, what's our next question here? What about tight ends? What are your expectations for? We know Will. You talk about Will Dissly, Evan. What is your expectation on the tight end position?
He's not going to be flashy. You'll see him run defenders like off the field. I think if you're watching like all 22 and stuff, I think he's going to make some really key blocks in the run game. I think Vanette is going to be the player to watch actually in terms of maybe replacing some of that touchdown production from Jimmy Graham. He had a really strong preseason, and I was really impressed with Vanette. So we saw that report that he was struggling with a back injury the past 2 years from Pete. I'm not sure how legit that is, to use a Pete term, but I think those are the 2 guys to watch. I think they'll each play pretty clear separate roles. And then Ed Dixon is maybe somebody to watch come back like halfway through the season off IR.
All right, I'm going to switch up here. So do any of you guys think, this is a question from SLC Seahawk, do any of you guys think that Earl may tank it this year? He'll just mail it in.
I mean, it would be dumb because he's looking for a contract, right?
Yeah.
I mean.
But the disrespect has been noted.
You know what? It's not who he is. It's not who he is.
Right. Exactly. He's too hyper competitive to go and mail it in. There's no way.
And if he was going to mail it in, he'd be missing games. He'd be missing game checks.
Yeah.
We've seen a million quotes from him where he's like, remember when Cam Chancellor held out and I think he made a comment about like, defending the battlefield with his brothers or something. But I think what Will said is absolutely on the money. He is a hyper competitive, highly emotional individual. There's absolutely no way he nails it this year.
Yeah, I agree. So we got a question from Captain Horrible, and kudos on the name there, the handle. What is the minimum performance you'd like to see from Trey Flowers to be confident with him starting? I'll take this one to start because I don't even know how I'd describe what would be the minimum performance, but I guess for me, nothing over the top. That would be the big, like, if he's letting someone beat him over the top, that is such a fundamental breakdown in the principles of this defense that would be a problem. Yeah. If he can, I don't care if he gives up 80 yards receiving, and 9 receptions or something. That's not that big of a deal. If he can do that and not be penalized significantly, like I don't want to see one penalty. I'd be okay if he has 2 penalties. So those are the things I'll be watching. Minimum performance, maybe keeping him in front, people in front, and 1 penalty at most. How about you guys?
They say corner is that position where if you're hearing the name too much, usually not a good thing. I don't want to hear Trey Flowers' name too many times throughout games this year. As long as you can kind of just be a competent player and just a guy that kind of holds your own. You may give up the occasional big play here and there, but if you can be a guy and just be a competent player, I'll be satisfied.
You know what? I'm telling you right now, Trey Flowers gets a pick tomorrow.
Oh, my God.
He gets a turnover. I'm telling you. Brian Netthauser, Mr. Pessimistic when it comes to our favorite 5th-round rookie. Oh, my gosh. No.
I just love Brian's reaction there.
I don't know, dude. Like,
oh, my God.
I would love to see a good couple pass breakups. I like you said, it's hard to quantify, but the keys are definitely.
Look at him falling back already. He's backpedaling faster.
No, I stand by my take. Getting a turnover tomorrow. I stand by it.
Okay,
I'll take it. I'd love one.
Calm down over there, dude. So let's keep going here. Oh, we got another question from Joey, and patrons always get their question answered first. So Joey's asking, Bob Condotta answered on Twitter yesterday that John Ryan's longest punt was 77 yards into it. By the way, Joey is not only asking questions, he is educating with his questions. So hats off to
I'm like learning.
This is awesome. So John Ryan's longest punt was 77 yards in 2011. Does our new Hall of Fame bound punter, Michael Dickson, beat that this year? Joey wants to know, am I the only one that wants to see Dickson drop kick a field goal?
Absolutely not the only person. I remember when me and Evan were at training camp, we were watching him do that, and our mouths dropped. Like, we were sitting there like, oh, my God, please do that this year. And, yes, he will break the 77-yard record.
If this was a decision between Blair Walsh kicking with his correct leg and Michael Dickson drop kicking a field goal, I'm taking Michael Dickson 100 times out of 100 times.
Yeah.
100 times.
Yeah.
So, yes, I want to see it.
So do you think he's going to punt longer than 77 this year, break the record?
I think he'll kick one out of the stadium.
I'll tell you, like, what I really want to see the most is when the Seahawks play Green Bay, that somehow someone gets from Jimmy Graham and go to Michael Dixon, and he like punts the thing like the stadium. Like, I'm so glad Jimmy Graham's gone. Great question there, Joey. Let's see. We already talked about their defense, so we'll pass on that one. Let's see. Penny was a wasted pick. That's not a question. That's a statement. All right. So, what are your expectations for Ken Norton tomorrow? What do you think is going to be different from what we've seen before?
He's going to do something interesting to get back to pressure because this defensive line, although it is playing well, it'll be interesting to see his development. He's going to have to work on creative to get pressure on opposing quarterbacks. Because outside of Frank Clark, who exactly is their pass rusher? So I don't know if he gets creative with blitzes or whatever, but I'd love to see the defense overall hold them to 17 points or less. That'd be pretty incredible in my mind.
I'm a big Ken Norton fan. I can't speak on what he'll do schematically throughout the year, but what I do think he brings back is grit to our defense and an attitude. And that's what I loved about him when he was here in our run. I don't know, Chris Richard just always kind of seemed a little bit like a pushover, almost like a player favorite, but not so much an intense one. And I think I really miss that about Ken Norton. I'll be looking forward to seeing that again.
Well, we're being told that we're having some bad connection show up on our video, so people are getting a little bit of jagginess. So we'll hold on here. Sounds like it's gotten better again. Yeah, I really would like to see Ken Norton. The thing I want to see the most, guys, from him is this is a guy that played middle linebacker. This is a guy that coached these linebackers when they first came into the league. He's got one of, if not the best middle linebackers in the NFL, one of the best blitzers at that position. Let it loose. Like, let's see a super aggressive Seahawks defense. It is not Pete Carroll's way, but maybe Ken Norton, maybe that's his one contribution. We know this is Pete's defense, but if he can add that as a additional look, I think Shaquem Griffin, Bobby Wagner, those are some of the things that they can do that other people can't. So use that speed. Let's make some plays. Let's create some turnovers because they sure as hell aren't doing it just by sitting back in zone. That has not been happening in the past few years.
Boy, it was special what happened this year.
Yeah, right. It's true. So we got another question from Captain Horrible. Do you think we will see Shaquem Griffin rush the passer at any point? Any of you guys have a strong opinion on that?
I do. I think he will. I think he'll do it standing up. I don't know that he'll be going down in a stance doing it, but he looked to be pretty great at that in college. If you watch him, and he was like, actually, I think that's probably his strong suit. He's getting to the passer, and I expected that of him.
It's his speed. He's blazing fast. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, and question here. We kind of went at this before. Do you guys think Penny or Carson will have more rushing yards in this game? Let me ask this. Does anyone think Penny will have more rushing yards than Chris Carson?
No.
No, of course not.
Barring an injury, no.
No, I agree. We have got now. You get bonus points if you can answer this question. This is from Chris Rude, who's actually a member of the Ring of Honor in the patrons. Had bonus of being able to meet Chris and his lovely wife, and Evan, you did too at dinner at Daniel's. So if you don't know that, Ring of Honor patrons, we do a once a year dinner at Daniel's. That's all included in your patron membership, and good food, good fun, good Seahawks talk. So I encourage you to head over to Patreon and sign up. There's a very limited opportunity to limited slots for that. So Chris Rude, with all that build-up, asks, if a player misses a drop kick, where does the other team take over possession of the ball? This is like trivia night stuff. Do either of you know the answer to that question?
No. No idea.
Okay, I'm going to go out on a limb. I am 90% sure that it is the same rule as if it was a place kick. There's no difference between a drop kick and a place kick in that regard. You get the ball where the kick happened.
That would make sense, I think.
Yeah. Now let's see. Any other questions? I actually, to Captain Horrible's question, I don't think Shaquem Griffin's ever going to rush on the edge. He is too small. He's 220, 225 pounds, like he's Malcolm Smith size. He's just not a D end. I think that's his best skill set, but I don't think he's going to do that in the NFL. All right. Interesting note here as well for people that don't know, Malik Turner was just signed to the practice squad. That was a receiver that a lot of people might not have paid a lot of attention to during the preseason. I think he's out of Illinois, and big receiver, talented athlete, never really broke out in college from everything I read. I was really impressed with him. I don't know if he's like Darrell Jackson is probably a little bit of a too much, giving him too much, but he was a really well-rounded receiver. Made deep catches, was able to make cuts, get open, get separation. 6'1", so he's big, fast. That was an interesting player. So I'm glad to hear the Seahawks at least saw some of that as well. So here's a question from Joe Shimoibes. I have doubts about that last name. His question is, have you read the article in Field Goals? Great blog. Have you read the article in Field Goals about the Seahawks running a variation of the 46 defense? This was written, I think, by Matty Brown. I'm not sure because I did read this article, and I didn't think that I really saw anything that proved this was actually the case more than a potential possibility. But it is interesting. I mean, they were talking about how it would affect the run game specifically, and how they could basically isolate their nose tackle on the center. And that's not something you get from the typical Seahawks 4-3 over defense. So I gave you guys some time talking. Did any of you guys read this article? No from Evan, no from Will. So that's what I got, Joe. I thought it was an interesting observation. I'll definitely be looking out for it. I do think that we might see something a little bit different with Shaquem Griffin in there this week. I wonder if, assuming Earl plays, I think their biggest concerns about Shaquem Griffin are his ability to handle the zone coverage assignments he's required to do, the right hook zones, the right, be in the right place at the right time. KJ Wright owns that stuff. I mean, he is as good as they come. That's one of his best attributes. So I do wonder if they're going to work on, if Earl's there and McDougald are there, do they maybe think Tedrick Thompson could be a third safety the way they used Jerron Johnson? Yeah, maybe they bring in a third safety and take Shaquem Griffin off the field. So that might be something that'd be interesting that happens there. All right, guys, closing thoughts. It is happening tomorrow. So what are the things you're wishing for Seahawks fans? Any closing statement you have before we wrap it up tonight? Evan, you begin.
Keep your eyes on the offensive line. This is a group that has fundamentally and schematically been improved this preseason. It's been improved from a coaching perspective this offseason. I think we've added better talent in DJ Fluker and J.R. Sweezy. I'm really, really excited about what this offensive line can do and ultimately what this offense can do. Like I've said before, it's very hard for me to see this offense fail if the offensive line is competent. So I'm hoping for a quick strike, a quick start for this offense. I'd love a touchdown on the first drive, just like Will said. They need to be aggressive. They need to be violent. They need to be dangerous, because this defense, I do not see being a consistent group. So Russell Wilson, lead us to the promised land.
Will, what do you got?
Yeah, we kind of touched on it earlier. Season outlook as a whole, that starts tomorrow. Gosh, if you can be a middle of the road defense this year with a strong running game, which it looks like there will be, with healthy Russell Wilson's going to do what Russell Wilson does. I think that we're being very undersold by people everywhere right now. I think we're a little underrated. As far as tomorrow goes, I like Case Keenum. I think he had a good year last year. If you look at his career as a whole, that year last year with Minnesota was the one outlier, and I want to remind everybody tomorrow and show everybody else what Case Keenum is and what he has been. I'm not ready to lose a game to Case Keenum tomorrow.
Yeah, the thing I am most excited about by far, and I just think is the one thing that nobody can predict. We just don't know. Is I almost said Darrell Bevel, but I meant Brian Schottenheimer. What is he going to do? Is he going to scheme? Are we going to finally have an interesting offense that takes advantage of the unique skills of Russell Wilson and takes advantage of what is a better offensive line? Seahawks offensive line is better than the Broncos offensive line. I have not been able to say that about almost any offensive line matchup in years. I actually really believe that to be true. So if Schottenheimer comes out, I think the thing that would make me most excited about that and really watch for is he utilizing the running backs in the passing game. Like, everyone talks about running the ball. Great. I know that they're going to do that. But if we're seeing more swing passes, more screen passes, more arrow routes and circle, routes, I think that's a really big deal because I think the Seahawks have a lot of talent at the running back spot. So if he's finding more ways to get the ball in their hands to make plays, it's huge. So that is probably the biggest Powerball aspect of this game. And look, teams do not score much in week 1. The Seahawks on the road do not score much on week 1. If they somehow get 20 points in this game, that would be insane against this defense in week 1. If they score more than that, then we're really talking about something interesting. So that's the part that I think is going to be great to watch. I really hope that we see this offense get started and Russell looks like he's in command. But the best news, guys, we get to find out. We get to find out at 1:25 tomorrow. So looking forward to that. With that, I'm going to say thank you, guys. Thanks for joining. If you haven't already, please go to patreon.com, patreon.com/hawkblogger. Sign up. Join here. We'll have more Q&As like this going throughout the season. Go Hawks.